Hi, so my name is Madeleine Matthews, and I'm a second year Master of Medical Science student at the Institute of Medical Sciences, which is at the University of Toronto St. George campus, and I'm a sex and gender scientist. Before I started my master's, I completed an honors Bachelor of Science in Biology and Psychology, Neuroscience, and Behavior from McMaster University. And at McMaster, I did my undergraduate thesis in a neuroscience lab, and I was studying autism and social behavior from a cellular and a behavioral lens. And so through that experience, I knew I wanted to go to grad school, but I wasn't really set on where or in what domain. And so I stayed on in that lab for a year after I graduated as a research assistant. And I gained a lot of wet lab work, and I also supported some animal behavior research. So it was a very hands-on experience, and I learned loads of different classical lab skills. And after that year, I moved on to a very different research assistant job, which is at a life sciences consulting company. And that's where we were supporting life science industry clients in all of their research related needs. So that could be anything from conducting a literature review to writing a publication, and then also completing an application for drug approval in Canada, for example. It was a fully virtual job. So it was a lot of reading, a lot of scientific writing, and then also some data analysis. So very different roles. And after both of those, I felt finally ready to apply for grad school, in part because I had gotten a bit more of a taste for what was out there and available to me. And after that experience, I finally felt ready to apply for grad school because I'd gotten a small taste of what was out there, and I'd been able, through my own roles and through asking coworkers about theirs, to get a feel for what I wanted to do. And I felt ready to take that next step very intentionally and pursue graduate studies. I would say if you're positive about your next steps, you've had some experience related to it, by all means, right after undergrad, go for it if it feels right for you. For me, I wasn't sure. So for students who are really unsure whether they want to attend grad school at all, I would very highly recommend to take a step back, work a job that's relevant to your undergrad degree in some way. It doesn't have to be an exact match for the thing you want to do, but work that for a while and see what you think. And doing that gives you some time and some space to think about your next steps, and then also save some money, recuperate some funds after your undergrad. But I do believe that grad school of any kind should feel like a very intentional choice rather than an automatic next step. So having that step back really helped me realize that and take the time and space to make that choice. I would also say that while my undergrad was a very invaluable experience, my few years of work experience that I had between undergrad and grad school, while brief, really helped me develop a skill set that I use daily in my research-based program. And then personally, from both of my research assistant experiences, I learned that I really wanted to work directly with people who would eventually be impacted by my research. My previous experiences were wonderful, and they helped me gain a real skill set that I use daily, but I wanted to feel more connected to the individuals who I was researching. So when I was deciding to apply for thesis-based graduate programs, that was something that I very actively sought out. And it's something that continues to really change my perspective on the research I do now that I'm in it. And I don't think I would be as happy with my choice if I hadn't come to that conclusion through my other experiences. Frankly, for me, I've always known that research was more of an interest to me than other science-related graduate or professional educational programs. So like med school, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, law school were all other very common choices for people who were in my undergraduate program. But for me, I'm a very naturally curious person. And so a thesis-based program like medical science at the Institute of Medical Science is very much designed so that you can exclusively focus on your research project, which is great if you're someone like me because you have way more space to ask why and then really delve into the work that you do rather than focusing on a whole slew of different courses, which can be wonderful just for other people depending on your preference. You also gain a lot of experience managing your own timeline and your own project, which for me is a welcome challenge and something I'm still working through. But I do think that that realization that I didn't have an interest in medicine in particular came from a hospital volunteer position that I had when I was in high school, which was when I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And I just realized that the lifestyle just wouldn't really make sense for me and what I wanted. So I'd highly recommend asking working professionals about their careers, beyond just the wider reputation of the career itself or the big wins that come from the work that they do. Ask them, what does every day look like? What is your schedule? And as well as the best parts, what are some of the worst parts so that you can start to weigh that out? It's not every job is perfect, obviously, but there may be jobs that are better suited to your interests and your lifestyle than others. And that actually goes for thesis-based graduate programs as well. So one of the great things about a thesis-based master's is that most of the work you do comes from your research project, which comes from your lab, rather than your program. And there are so many different kinds of labs and lab cultures and different types of supervisors. And so when you're looking for a lab, ask questions about the ins and outs of every single day in that lab. What's the work that you're going to be doing? What's the skill set you'll be developing? What does the culture in the lab look like? And what kind of a mentor is your supervisor? And make sure that you ask those questions to other graduate students as well as the potential thesis supervisor you're talking to get their perspective and a wider idea of what the lab looks like. So I'm in a medical science program. And my research is focused on healthcare, but I actually conduct qualitative research rather than quantitative research. My research focuses on sex and gender equity in clinical trials for kids with rare conditions, and I collect my data through surveys and interviews. So I get to hear firsthand the experiences of these children with rare conditions, their caregivers, and also researchers in the rare disease space about how sex and gender are considered in their clinical trials, and then how we can do better moving forward with that information. Frankly, I'm most excited and really honored that our research participants trust me with their stories and that I will ethically mobilize that information to make a real difference in the experiences of others like them. My undergrad degree at McMaster was a wonderful experience, and doing a double major in biology and psychology, neuroscience, and behavior gave me a lot of variety. And so the scope of that being so broad, I was able to explore a lot of my different interests, and that was a part of why I chose that program. So I was able to try out all kinds of different research disciplines and then eventually decide to do my undergraduate thesis in neuropsychiatric conditions and behavioral neuroscience. But beyond that, I also would say the best thing about my program at Mac was that it had loads of built-in research experiences as a part of the program design. We had the opportunity to work directly with loads of different teams to begin to develop skills that were relevant to our research interests and explore where our passions were. And my program also focused a lot on those key skills that you develop when you're gaining research experience, like critical review of literature, scientific writing, and then also presentation skills, which I use all the time in my current program. I would also say that in my undergrad, I participated in a number of different extracurriculars that were focused on both women in STEM and gender equity in healthcare. And those helped shape my interest in sex and gender science. And that's something that has really influenced my research approach and my research interests going forward. So I'd say don't count out those extracurriculars. They may not just be a side hustle. They might be something that really shape the choices you make for yourself in your future. So ironically enough, even though I am a research trainee at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, my research isn't specifically focused on mental health. But I will say that the work environment at CAMH is wonderful, and that kindness and empathy there really do go a long way. And I think those are the people that work at CAMH are really practicing what they preach, and that they are kind, empathetic. There's a lot of consideration for the thoughts and experiences of others in a way that I really do admire, and I hope to take with me moving forward. And I do think that that's something that comes with the priorities of our research and the years of training that so many of the individuals at CAMH have in working in mental health care. Two really big ones for me that are intertwined have been time management and expectation management. And I'll explain why those are intertwined in a second. But just for reference, as you all know, your undergrad is built up of a bunch of little deliverables that have much smaller timelines. And then you also have lots of built-in breaks through your winter break, your summer off, depending on the way your program is structured and so on and so forth. And research-focused grad school doesn't have any of that. So you're working on your one main project or several large projects, and each of them take years to complete. And typically the program will also run year-round. So with that in mind, you need to find a schedule that works for you so that you don't burn out and also so that you can celebrate your own achievements. So the best advice I've ever received to address both of those, managing your own time and managing your expectations, are just to plan and plan and plan some more and figure out what keeps you disciplined. So to manage your time, I typically treat grad school like a job, like a 9 to 5. And I try to restrict the amount of time I spend on research to the workday whenever I can because I work from home. So if I wanted to just keep going forever and ever and ever, I could. And if I'm having a day where there's just not that much happening or I'm not in the mood, I could also just leave it. So I have to stay disciplined in some way. Sometimes you'll have a huge deadline, you'll really be in a groove, and you'll have to get things done. So you'll have to go over your full workday and things happen. But the best way to do it, I've found, is to plan your years out very far in advance and try to keep on that working schedule. And then to manage your own expectations, try to split your huge tasks into smaller milestones and make sure that you celebrate each of those milestones that you've accomplished. Because when you're working on one thing for so long, it can feel like you've accomplished absolutely nothing. And in reality, you're working day in and day out and making sure that the project keeps moving. So this could be things like scholarship applications, your committee meetings that you're preparing for, receiving an ethics approval, or finishing a course even. Make sure you celebrate those because those all build up and they become what ends up being your degree. So undergrad was very much like, okay, I did it. I have this course. I have these 3 things that I have to complete in the course. And then I'm done. And yay, and then I feel really good about that. It's a semester, and a semester can feel like a long time, but it's a lot shorter than several years. So for me, I've felt that building in those check marks for myself along the way so that I can celebrate my little wins instead of waiting for the big win to come after a really, really long time does keep you on track. And I guess other good advice there is to keep your hobbies. Have things that outside of grad school help satisfy you and bring you joy because it's very easy to just fall in a hole and just be focused on the research you do and the work that will come out of your degree, and to lose the fact that you're living a life along the way. At least in terms of this degree, a thesis-based Master of Science gives you all kinds of wonderful relevant skills for lots of different jobs in science, and those could be in academia or they could be industry related. So thesis students can become critical readers, writers, presenters, and their project managers. And then on top of all of those skills that you develop, your own research project will come with the development of a specialized skill set of its own because you've been so focused on one thing for a period of time. And I would also say that 2 to 3 years, so that Master of Science period, may not feel like a very long time in the grand scheme of your whole career, but you do want to make sure that a thesis-based Master of Science will help you achieve your goals long term, if it's something you actually want to do or need to do. And in addition to that, that the lab that you're choosing is one where you can see yourself working every single day for a few years. So try to create a long list of programs and supervisors that interest you very early. I would say ideally this summer before you're planning on applying so that you can reach out to them and see if they're accepting anyone for the coming cycle and start to weigh your options. And when you are meeting with supervisors, remember that an interview is something that goes 2 ways. So yes, you should be prepared. And it is really exciting that they've chosen to meet with you, but you're also choosing them. So try to figure out what type of manager they are and if that's going to suit your needs as a student. And the right match will come along. You just have to have an open mind and try out lots of different options. And I wish you good luck because you've got this. When I was applying for grad school, I was getting a lot of no's. You send a lot of emails and you may never hear back from those people. And at a certain point, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, it's not going to happen. And it will. It will work out eventually. And I would also say don't accept the first offer that comes just because it's the offer that came if you're really unsure about the environment you'd be working in. How do I balance coursework, research, and personal life? With difficulty, definitely. So for me specifically, I work in a virtual lab. And that makes drawing the lines between my research and my personal life very challenging. While courses are important, in my program specifically, they're a means for developing skills to use in your research rather than the focus of the program. So coursework doesn't tend to be a massive challenge, at least from my perspective, but balancing the completion of the thesis and personal life does become a challenge. So I go back to my previous advice about setting yourself on a working schedule. If you do work in a lab, you'll have to go in and work from there, which makes it a lot easier to set boundaries for yourself in some ways. And if you're at home, I find it helpful to work in a different space than the one where I relax, or to get myself in a zone where I can set everything on do not disturb and just focus on my work and get it done. And then cut yourself off in the evenings and weekends whenever you can. It's not always possible, but if you can, try to trim that down. If the whole week is starting to blur together into the next one, it might be time to add in some breaks for yourself because it'll help your mental health and it'll also improve the quality of the work that you create. But yes, with difficulty, with great difficulty. Still something that I'm working on all the time. Haven't quite figured it out yet, frankly. I can't say exactly where my research is going to lead me, but I do hope that my current work makes a meaningful difference in the lives of my participants, as well as those with lived experience who are like them. And longer term, I want to conduct research that results in more equitable healthcare design, particularly for women, girls, and gender diverse people. In short, I just really hope to make a positive impact.